Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to this review of the Tier 8 French self-propelled gun, the Lorraine 155-51. As the name suggests, it's based on the chassis of a Lorraine medium tank. It's got a 155mm gun and it was designed in 1951. The French names do tend to be quite descriptive of the tank in that way. Above and beyond that, don't actually know much about this machine. It was an experimental machine, it never actually got put into production. What do you get in the game then? Well, 390 hit points is around about par for the course for a Tier 8 artillery piece, but what really sets this machine apart is the 850 horsepower engine, 60 km/h top speed limit. Basically, for an artillery piece, this machine is damn fast. It's based on the chassis of the Lorraine medium tank that you find at Tier 9 in the French tech tree, which is a fast machine, and so this is also a fast machine. And that's really what defines the French self-propelled gun line. In fact, it's what defines a lot of the French lines at the higher tiers. I will mention the armour briefly in a moment. I mean, it's an artillery piece. The armour isn't that important, but I will mention it briefly in a moment. But in the garage, it states it as 40, 30, and on the rear 25, and that is pretty uniformly true. There are a couple of aberrations, but it's pretty much there or thereabouts. I'll talk about the gun in a bit as well. The hull traverse speed is 28 degrees a second. It lists a gun traverse speed of 14 degrees a second. That's not really relevant because this has a limited gun arc, so a more relevant piece of information would be how wide that gun arc is, and you should see that in the replay that I've got to show you. 330 meter view range is terrible. Going back a little bit now, the view ranges of all the artillery got nerfed, so it's very difficult for this machine to spot for itself. Signal range of 750 is pretty good, but you're not going to be getting that excited about signal range. Although, having said that, it's one of the more... signal range is more important as an artillery player than it is in a lot of machines, as you are often... perhaps toward the end of the game, if there's only a few of you left, you are often separated from whoever is doing the spotting by some considerable distance. So, what about those guns? Well, this machine gets two guns. You've got the stock weapon from the Lorraine 155-50, and then you've got the fully upgraded weapon, and it is an upgrade. Let's not beat around the bush here. If you look at the stock gun, it's a Tier 7 155mm gun, 2.25 rate of fire, 90 penetration, 950 alpha damage with your HE rounds, 0.76 dispersion at 100 meters, and a 6.5 second aim time. If you look at the top gun, your rate of fire goes down, but everything else is an increase across the board pretty much. Your HE penetration goes up by 5, nothing to get too excited about, but more is more. Your alpha damage goes up by 300, your dispersion comes down to 0.74, your aiming time comes down to 6 seconds. So it is an upgrade. However, I should probably note with both of these guns, they use, in terms of ammunition, two sorts of high explosive round and a heat round. The difference between the two high explosive rounds, because statistically they look identical, is that the second one is your premium round, quote unquote, or one of your premium rounds, and it gets a larger splash radius. The splash radius on this machine is not particularly impressive. The heat ammo is pretty terrible. Bearing in mind the American heat ammo at Tier 5-6 gets 250 penetration, you're stuck at 185 at Tier 7 and Tier 8. Not very good, and for 720 alpha damage, it's just not worth it. Especially when you consider that the shell trajectory of these guns is very flat, meaning that you're very unlikely to get shots go through the engine deck or the roof armor. They're likely going to be hitting the front or the side, and 185mm of average penetration fired from maybe 800 meters away with terrible accuracy is not enough to really do anything. So I do not recommend loading any of these heat rounds. Just to give you an idea, the dispersion and aiming time values are relatively good for a Tier 8 artillery piece, but the alpha damage is pretty weedy. The main selling point about this tank is the mobility. The gun gets the job done. In terms of an ammo loadout, I would probably recommend going for Mostly your regular HE, some premium HE because of the larger splash radius. I mean, if you look here, regular round has just under 4 meter splash radius. The upgraded round has over 5 meter splash radius. And I would ditch the heat ammo. Worth pointing out that both of those... Oh, no, they're not. That's a lie. Only the heat ammo is a premium round. No, sorry, I lie again. Both the heat ammo and the second HE ammo are both premium rounds, so they cost a lot more credits. Your regular shells cost just over 1,000 credits, your premium ammo costs over 5,000, or just under 5,000 credits in the case of the heat round that you're never going to use. So the main thing about this tank is mobility, being somewhere else, to kind of make up for your slightly dodgy gun performance. What about the grind on this machine? Well, the French SPG line is not bad, actually. The lower tier machines down here at tiers 2 and 3 tend to be relatively slow with fairly respectable guns. From sort of tier 4 and upwards, you're getting this much more mobile type of machine, especially at tier 6, where you've got this artillery piece based on the chassis of an AMX 13-ton light tank. Then you have these SPGs based on the chassis of the Lorraine medium tanks, and it makes these things very, very fast indeed. When you get to the Lorraine here at tier 8, you've got what your stock configuration is going to be very stock, most likely. The only module you might have already is the radio, and you could argue that you can perhaps skip the radio, because once you get to tier 10 on this line, the radio is automatically unlocked. This is the same radio here. However, if you don't use the radio, you're stuck with a 400 meter signal range, and whilst people don't tend to get very excited about radios, in the case of artillery, I think it is a worthwhile investment, especially when you consider 9,000 experience and 54,000 credits. It's not that much at the end of the day. The engine, however, you will probably not already have. In fact, you certainly won't already have, because it is unique to this machine. And it takes your horsepower from 700 to 850. It is definitely worth getting both the engine and the suspension in order to increase your mobility, as that is the point of this tank, and the gun you have to get in order to progress to the tier 9. It's not a particularly painful grind. I would recommend prioritizing either the gun or the mobility. You could take either route, it's kind of up to you. Take your pick. But it's not a very painful grind. Once you're fully upgraded, you have to bear in mind that your gun is relatively weedy, so you shouldn't just be sitting at the baseline thumping shells at people. You should be using that mobility. The shells, HE shells, also don't have a particularly large splash radius, so do also bear that in mind. Crew skills and equipment, well, I'm not going to recommend anything particularly surprising here. Sixth Sense on your commander does actually come in handy, because with the French SPGs, if you've been spotted, you do often actually have the time to relocate. You might take a hit, but as long as you're not one-shotted, you should have the time to go somewhere else. So Sixth Sense is actually valuable. Camo on everyone else is probably a good idea to remain as sneaky as you possibly can. Equipment, I would say you're probably best off going with a gun rammer, an enhanced gun laying drive to improve your aiming time, and then your pick. You could go for a camo net to try and make yourself a bit sneakier. You could indeed go for a spool liner to reduce the amount of HE splash damage you take and try and survive being counter-batteried a little bit longer. You could also take binocular telescopes on the basis that every once in a while you might need to actually do a little bit of spotting, and they will massively increase your ability to do so. So I would say one of those 3 pieces of kit for your third equipment slot is probably the way you want to go. Consumables, I don't have anything special. I went for your standard repair kit, first aid kit, fire extinguisher. You could also use, you could probably ditch the first aid kit and the fire extinguisher, to be honest. Repair kit can be useful for the tracks. And you could instead use one of the fuels in order to improve your engine power, as that is the point of this tank, and strong coffee to just all-round improve your crew. You can't use vents on this tank because it's closed-topped, but strong coffee might be your friend. I leave that choice up to you. I don't think there's anything else I really want to say about this machine in the garage, so for now let's just go and have a very quick look at the armor scheme and then look at a little bit of gameplay, and then we'll come back to the garage later. Now, I am actually quickly going to talk about the armor profile of this tank, just from the perspective of killing it as quickly as possible. So, if you've got armor-piercing shells, you're basically going to penetrate this thing wherever you point the gun. But, if you load high explosive shells, where can you penetrate it? Well, the rear of the machine is 20mm thick, so most HE rounds will go through the rear of this without too many problems. 30mm thick at the sides, so some 75 and 76mm HE might start having problems with the side armour. And of course you've got the tracks. From the front, if you're going to use HE, I would say stick to 85, 90mm and greater high explosive rounds. Lower caliber HE may not penetrate the front of this tank reliably. If you've got a 105 or a 122mm gun or something, HE against this will work fine. But against the front of this tank, if you've got 90mm gun, might be a bit of a what's the phrase I'm looking for? A bit of a close run thing. It might do the job, it might not. If you do have a shot at the front of this with HE, I know this is aiming for weak spots, which you shouldn't really need to do, but this bit might be 43 effective armor, but this top section is only 30, so there is that. You know, it's a little bit thinner, it's basically side armor, but the point I'm getting at is that 90mm HE or greater shouldn't have too many problems with this machine. Certainly the larger caliber high explosive won't have a problem at all, but 75mm HE might come across some problems, so depending on what angle you've got to shoot at this tank, if you've got a 75mm gun, so you're talking some of the light and medium tanks that encounter this machine, you might want to stick to armor-piercing ammo. That's all I really wanted to say about the armor profile, so let's just go and have a look at some gameplay. So here's the replay I've got to show you. Now I will be honest, this is not going to be the most exciting game in the Lorraine that I've ever had. But I'm showing this one, well, to be honest, I'm showing this one because towards the end of my Lorraine grind, this was the most appropriate game that I had. I didn't have a particularly good end to this grind. But then again, there are quite a few games on my channel showing this machine, so if you want to go and have a look at those, then by all means do so. Now initially, I should mention, this is a patch 9.9 game and we are here on Redshire. Now initially I have decided to move up to this location. Why have I done that? And that was a mistake, knocking that tree over, if I'm going to be honest. This is not going to be a spectacular game. I've moved up to this location because I wanted to try and keep relatively close to my allies who were pushing the flank. I didn't want there to be too much distance between myself and my targets if I could possibly avoid it. R5916 has just been bum rushed by an AMX-12T and an IS-8, and moving over to this location where I am allows me to put a 1500 HP shell through the rear armour of that IS-8. I would not have been able to do that if I had just stayed exactly where I'd spawned. Or at least I'd have struggled to do that because of the way the hills are positioned. Again, moving between shots here. Now this replay is not going to show you the Lorraine's spectacular mobility, unfortunately. Like I said, I didn't really have a replay that showcased that, but I do have some games in the Lorraine that may well show that for you. So if you want to go and have a look at those, then by all means go and do so. T54 mod 1, there we go, there's a bit of damage on him. One thing that this replay I think will highlight, however, is the gun performance. This is quite a weedy gun to have on a tier 8 artillery piece, and in order to do any real damage you need to be getting those direct hits. So far we've fired 2 shots and we've had 2 direct hits, one of which did a phenomenal amount of damage to that poor IS-8. I did feel a little bit sorry for him. VKA has made it behind a hill, which is unfortunate. Now I could relocate in order to get a better shot on that VK, but I'm a little concerned about getting spotted as I do so. So for now, I just want to hang tight. AMX-12T has just been taken out, so I don't have to worry about him. Someone is in the capture circle. It's probably that IS-8 from earlier on, would be my best guess. There he is. Can we possibly finish this chap off? Taking aim, and I don't want to kill RWZ there. someone else takes a shot at the IS-8, lining up a shot myself, and we execute the IS-8. So there we go. We've completely killed a tier 9 heavy tank, and we put a chunk of damage into a tier 8 medium. So far the gun's been working. Hurrah! And the gun for a tier 8 artillery piece is relatively accurate and relatively fast aiming. Of course, it's still an artillery piece at the end of the day. It's never going to be as accurate or as fast to aim as a non-artillery piece. So trying to attack this Tiger P. I take the shot blind, but he hasn't moved far from there, but just look how far away from my aiming point that shot landed. Part of that is because it was at long range. Part of that was just, I guess, a little bit of poor luck. Part of it is because the aiming circle is so large. And part of it is because the Lorraine has a very, very flat shell trajectory, and so you tend to find the shots have a habit of scattering quite a lot forwards and backwards, if that makes sense. Now, Bulldog here is going for our AMX. I really don't want to take this shot because I don't want to kill our own AMX. Maybe I should have taken that shot, but the Panther was coming up behind him anyway, so the Bulldog was always going to die for it. Enemy AMX over here. Trying to aim at his last known location. If someone can spot this guy, I might be able to get a shot on him. I take the blind shot anyway, but I might have just about splashed him, but it doesn't look like I really did a significant amount of damage. There's only the 5 of them left now. This is a fairly quick game. An M53-55, an M40-43, a Tiger P, an AMX AC-46, and an M12. I stand corrected. The M40, M43 gets taken out. The AMX is down on 330 health. And we aim, and we aim, and the FV finishes him off. So there's just the 2 of them left now. This game has kind of passed us by. Our WZ is saying he needs a kill. So do I for my mission, but never mind. But he's now got his kill by the look of it. And again, I'm just trying to take a bead on this Tiger P. We don't know exactly where that M53 is. He hasn't yet been spotted, although I wouldn't be surprised if that 1375 ran straight into him. There he is. And the Tiger P has also drastically moved, so re-aiming. Tiger P is behind a building. M53-55 is running for it. I want him to get respotted so I can take a fairly reliable shot at him. Still don't have shots on the Tiger P, and if I relocated at this point I would just lose the chance of any shots that I might get. Because, you know, it's at the stage of the game where all the players are just going, mine, mine, M53-55, take the shot, and miss by a country mile. Again, in that long ways direction, we miss in the direction along the direction of fire. It's just this Tiger P left now, and now you get a chance to see the mobility of the Lorraine. I know it's not a critical point of the match, but you still get a chance to see this thing moving around, and you can see we're doing 50 kilometers an hour, 40 in a turn. And so we're able to fairly quickly relocate. Tiger P crops up again. But someone finishes him off, and that is the game. So like I said, nothing too spectacular, and more focusing on what you can expect from the gun performance, I guess, than on the mobility of the tank. But you got to see a little bit of the mobility right at the end. And as I say, if you want to see some more replays from the Lorraine, then I do have other replays on my channel from this tank. Anyway, let's go and have a look at the results from this game. So that match ended up being third class mastery for me. Now, we only actually hit, well, 2 targets. We hit 3 of our shots. But that was still enough for us to finish 1, 2, 3, 4th on our team if you order it by experience. Just in case anyone was interested, that WZ, Fish, which is an awesome name, who was talking about his mission that needed to be done, he got 4k assistance damage. He messaged me after the game telling me that he did actually complete his mission, so congratulations to him. We did 2,170 damage, 6 shots fired, 3 hits, 3 misses. the gun on the Lorraine doesn't really tend to do much damage unless you score a direct hit, and because it's got that very shallow shell trajectory, you do tend to find shots going quite long or quite short some of the time. That game was made significantly better by the very lucky penetrating shot on the IS-8, partly very lucky that he was there and that I had a shot on his rear, but also, if I hadn't have moved that little bit at the beginning and not just sat where I spawned, I wouldn't have even had that shot to take, so there is also that to bear in mind. We even made a small profit from that game, even though it was quite a quick game. Making a 12,000 credit profit from it. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a flavour for the Lorraine. As I say, if you want to see some more gameplay, I do have other videos showing this tank, so just go and either Google Lord Chipmunk Lorraine 155, or look at something like my SPG's playlist, and you should be able to find this tank without too much difficulty. Anyway, let's go back to the garage for now. So overall, what do I think of this machine? Well, I prefer it to a lot of artillery pieces where your reload is monstrously long, your aiming time is monstrously long, you're horrendously inaccurate, you're relying on that one golden shot per game really to make the game worthwhile, even though that's what I actually had in the replay that I showed you, and that can't relocate if things go wrong. But I don't think this machine is for me. So I've since bought, as you can see in my garage, the Tier 9 French artillery, the Batchat 155-55. That's got a turret, and this is, in my opinion, tier for tier, a far better machine than the Lorraine. So in my opinion, you're probably better off just getting through the Lorraine and then moving up to the Batchat at Tier 9. This thing is, I mean, mine is still, well, not completely stock, but, you know, I've unlocked the top radio from the previous machine and the suspension. I still don't have the engine or the gun, but I've already aced this thing, and I actually find it relatively fun to play for an artillery piece. And for me, that's quite something. Even pondering possibly keeping this machine, although it's early days yet. So I think, whilst the Lorraine is not a bad tank, I think the Batchat at Tier 9 is far better tier for tier. So for me, the Lorraine is definitely not a keeper, but I will leave it up to you to make your own judgment about that. Anyway, I hope you vaguely enjoyed that review, maybe even found it vaguely informative. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel. And I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.